In this video, I'll be covering what's new in HOCWIM 766. First, 766 does include a database upgrade. It is applied when you log into the facility, so you no longer need to use server setup to go and upgrade your databases. You do, however, want to log into each one of your databases as the upgrade gets applied. When the first user logs in, it'll check the version of the database, add the appropriate fields, and then update the database version to 766. Security setup. So we've added a new feature called user profiles. You can still use user setup the way you always have. You add your users in and can set their preferences and their access to groups such as entry groups, report groups, etc., just like you always have. But what a user profile allows you to do is set up a profile or a security template that then you can assign multiple users to. So for example, you could set up a user profile called operators, and you could say that they have rights to these two facilities, and in the wastewater treatment plant they can enter data, they can into certain groups, they can run these reports, they have these preferences, and they have these data approval levels. Then in the same form, you can set up for the water treatment plant, those operators, which are wastewater operators, can simply get into the water treatment plant as a read-only user, and they can run just these certain reports. Now, what's nice about user profiles is that then I can assign my 5 operators in the plant, Bob and Scott and Jim and Bob and Mary, to that user profile. And then let's say somebody says, well, we need them to be able to also graph data in the water system, in the drinking water plant. I can go into that user profile, just check off that they need to run those reports in the user profile setup, and all 5 of those users will now have those rights. So it makes it a lot easier if you have a lot of users to maintain your security system. If you have very few users, you can still do it exactly as you do it now. Each user is set up individually. You don't have to use user profiles. It's just something there that can make it a lot easier to maintain your security setup if you want to. We've also added new settings that allow a manager to kind of have more power in the system. These settings allow you to toggle on and off whether the manager has these, such as things like the data read-only flag and the setup or the definition read-only flags in variable setup. You can now allow managers, if you want to be able to check and uncheck those boxes. Variable setup, we've added a couple things. One is custom messages for entry limits. So when you enter in your entry limits, let's say on a flow, and if it's greater than 10, you want to tell them that to check the SCADA system, and you may need to go look at the mechanical totalizer because that's a number that you wouldn't expect. So you want to give specific instructions if you're seeing certain numbers. So now you can go in and type in that message of right next to where you set the limit as 10. It'll say, what's your custom message? You can fill it out and say, please check the number on the SCADA graph and go and check the mechanical totalizer also before confirming this result. So you can give specific instructions to the people entering data based on these custom messages. The preview calc button has been added. What this allows you to do is troubleshoot and create equations or formulas a lot easier. So in variable setup, you go in and you're setting up, let's say, variable 3, and you want to enter it in, and it's variable 1 plus variable 2 and divided by some conversion factor, like 4, let's say. So you go ahead and type that equation in, and then you can click this button. It'll pull up variable 3 in a monthly data entry form with variable 1 and variable 2 right next to it. So you type in some numbers, you click calc, and you find out it doesn't calculate what you want because you typed in V1 plus V2 divided by 4, which you need to say it's open parentheses V1 plus V2 close parentheses divided by 4 to get what you want. So this helps you kind of quickly test your equations, go back and forth. When you close that monthly data entry form, you'll come right back into variable setup, into that equation, can go ahead and edit it, test it again. So it just makes kind of troubleshooting and updating your equations a lot easier than exiting variable setup, going to monthly data entry, maybe inserting that column into a form, right-clicking, listing inputs. So it just makes it a lot more efficient. Now again, this is just an introductory video, so I'll be taking you through in subsequent videos each one of these features specifically. On the dashboard, we've added some new buttons along the top or on the toolbar of the dashboard. One is an edit button, so if you're a super user, you can simply click it and it'll pull that dashboard or report up in the report designer, allowing you to get in there and edit it very quickly and easily, not having to remember what you named it or find it. The open button allows any user to open a different dashboard or report as long as they have rights in the group managers to those reports. So if you have a dashboard, let's say you're the manager and you want to see the operator's dashboard, before you had to put a shortcut button on your dashboard to that. Now you could just go to open to see what they're seeing. This also allows, when you're opening up the dashboard, it will prompt or have a checkbox that you can set this dashboard, the one you're opening, as your default dashboard. Makes it a lot easier for users to set which dashboard they want to see. Again, there's an option in your user profile or security setup that allows you to specify whether an operator or a user can set their own dashboard if you don't want to allow that access. There's also been a date picker added to the dashboard. So now the dashboard is actually very similar to almost like a print preview window. So you can go open up any report, see it on your dashboard, use the date picker to choose whatever dates you want to see, or on your own dashboard you can just change it. I've got my KPI data, now I want to see what it was for last month. I can just click the little back arrow button and see, and the dashboard will be refreshed automatically with the dates that you've selected. In spread reports, we've added a copy sheet functionality. So now under the sheet menu, you can go and copy the sheet. Before, what you had to do is add a sheet, then go back to the sheet you were interested, use copy special, paste special, use copy format, paste format. So it took you several steps. Now the copy sheet, just in one step, will create a new sheet and take all of the settings, all of the fonts, all of the formulas and column widths, and put it into the new sheet for you. Makes it a lot easier if you're doing reports like a DMR or something with the same format on 10 pages. Now it's very easy. You get the first page right and can just copy it and then relocate the data that as needed on that report, on that sheet. We've added or updated several new functions. The VInfo, variable info function, now supports the more additional info fields, and we've added a field called XREF, which you can use to display the variable cross-referencing information. So if it's a limbs, if it's cross-referenced to limbs, it'll show those fields. And if it's cross-referenced to a SCADA tag, it'll show that. So you don't have to build if statements to just show the cross-referencing. You can just use this XREF function. VDE is flags data that has been edited. So this would return a 1 if data has been edited for that particular variable data slot. So for a given date and time in a variable, it would say, was data entered and then subsequently deleted, or was data entered and then subsequently changed, or was it forced? So this allows you to flag data in a report that may be that you want to drill down into or look further into. LInfo, the location info function, we've added support for the additional info fields on the location table. GSV, which is a lightly used function, it's called the group sample violation. And it's meant to calculate, did you miss a sample? So you can, in this function, specify things like I want to take it 3 times a week. And then it'll make sure that we see at least 3 values a week, or it'll return the number of values that were missed within that time period. What we've added is you can now pass in like custom dates. So if you could pass in the first 2 weeks of the report, let's say, and then you can specify just a number like 1. I need 1 sample in the first 2 weeks. So it's actually kind of a simpler format or form of this function has been added, makes it a little easier to use. GMedZ, so the group median function, the Z means it's going to be able to handle data qualifiers function has been added, and then the daily detail result comment when occurs function has been added. Prompts now allow a custom SQL query for the pick list. So what this means is a prompt typically is located in the report, and you're going to prompt for like a variable number. So when you run the report, the user can hit the browse button or the three dot button, and it'll pull up the variable browser. They can pick that variable, and then maybe the report will run against that variable number. So what we've added is the ability to add a custom SQL query. So we have the ability to prompt for, like I said, a variable number, a location, things like that. Now, with SQL, any table that you have within the WIMS database, you can now build a prompt against, just doing like select star from the colors table or something like that if you wanted to prompt for a certain color. We've made some significant improvements to conditional formatting. The biggest improvement is the ability to refer to anchored and unanchored cells when you set up conditional formatting. So what this means is I can say, hey, I've got a cell, let's say I've got a column of data in column A, and I want to compare it to values in column B. So I highlight A1 through A10, let's say, and then I can say I want A1 to be compared to the cell B1. And if I've done that and I don't use the $, which is anchored cell references, it will make A1 will be compared to B1 and A2 will be compared to B2. Or conversely, I can now use the $signs to anchor it in. So if I did the same thing and I anchored it to B2, every cell A1 through A10 in that conditional formatting is going to refer to B2 because it has been anchored. So it works like you would expect when you're copying formulas and things like that. It works like you would expect a spreadsheet to act. So it, again, supports both anchored and unanchored cell references, which can make it a lot easier to set up conditional formatting. It also, we've added the ability to apply multiple formats for true conditions. So we have a new option called Apply All True Rules. What that does is previously what you would do is you'd set up a situation where you wanted to highlight the data in red if it was greater than 20, and so you would say if it's greater than 20, make it red, and then the second condition would be if it's greater than 10, it'd be yellow. And what we would do is if the first condition was true, we would stop evaluating conditions. In other words, it would become red, end of story. Now with the apply all true rules, you could say, well, if it's greater than 20, I want to make it red. And then the second rule could be if greater than cell B2, I want it to be bold. So then it would be if it's greater than 20, it's red. And then it will also check if it's greater than cell B2, it's going to be bold. So it allows you to apply multiple conditions. We fixed a bug with the gauges when they were output to a PDF or to a printer. They were getting shrunk or crushed down in that cell, not sized properly, and now they've been sized properly. Monthly data entry, we've added something called border edited data. So by default, this will be off. It'll be on your status bar and you can turn it on, and it can be saved with the layout. So if you decide to turn this on, it will stay on the next time the user opens up the form if you save that layout. So what border edited does is it will draw a light blue border around cells where data has been edited. So what does edited mean? It means data has been entered and then has subsequently either been deleted or the value has changed. So this would be a way you could use monthly data entry to kind of review data. And data typically shouldn't be edited usually in WIMS. So this would maybe allow you to drill in or click on it and then see the audit trail. You'd see the full changes there. You don't need to turn this on, but it's a nice way to review your data. Also, we've added the ability to look at data additional info fields, and LabCal data can now be set up as columns. So within monthly data entry, let's say you have an data additional info field called MDL. So you have arsenic displayed on your monthly data entry form. You can right click and say add in the column MDL right next to it. So this would say, okay, column 1, let's say, would be you enter your arsenic result, and column 2 then would ask for your MDL, and you would just type it in. Before, we had a floating window, or you'd have to right click to bring it up every time. Now that data can automatically be displayed, kind of like in a report. So if you're importing this data additional info, this MDL from a LIMS interface, you can just have it displayed, but it also makes it a lot easier to enter the data. In other words, it actually looks like a variable. A user using it would just say, oh, I'm supposed to type in the MDL. I type that data in. So it makes it a lot easier to enter that kind of information. Same thing goes for LabCal. So now when you insert a variable, let's say again, you've got arsenic and you've got LabCal, and you want to display and be able to enter the data like when was the analysis started, when was the analysis complete, and who ran the analysis, which are all LabCal fields. You can insert those three fields right next to the arsenic column, and they'll be LabCal data. And again, a user just goes in and can type in a date time, type in the analysis end date time, and then we'll have a pull down list, just like it would in LabCal, for all the analyst name or all the people that you've set up, and they can choose who analyzed the data. The other nice thing about the LabCal data is if you've scheduled arsenic to be like once a week on Friday, all the other days will say no sample. So every day but Friday will say no sample. So you can actually see the sample schedule now on your monthly data entry form. Block stats used to be you could hit right click and bring it up. Now block stats, as you highlight a range of cells in monthly data entry, the block stats are automatically displayed in the lower right corner on the status bar. So I highlight 6 cells or 7 cells for a week, and it'll show me the average, min, max, count, geometric mean in the lower right corner for the highlighted variable, so I don't have to do as much right clicking. The quick trend graph is now a floating window that updates to the current variable. So what that means is I can bring up my quick trend graph like I always used to. I can set the date range, like maybe the monthly data entry is showing the current month, but I want to see the last 90 days worth of data. I can set my date range of that graph, and then I can move that window off to the side or maybe even on another monitor. And as I click around in monthly data entry, changing variables, the graph will automatically update. So I can get a trend. I don't have to, oh, I want to look at BOD, right click. I want to look at turbidity, right click each time. Once I bring the graph up, I can leave it up. Force now allows you to enter in a result comment as you're forcing the data. So force is used to override a calculation on a specific day, and best practices, we always said, is right click, go to force your number in, and then right click again, go to the result comment and enter in why you had to force this value. So now the force window comes up, it says what's the value, and optionally what's your result comment. It just makes it a lot easier to follow best practices that we want you to be entering those result comments. We've updated the background colors for entry limit and daily violations in both custom and monthly data entry. So entry limits now show up in light yellow and daily violations show up in light red. And we've gotten rid of we used to have a third color if it was both a daily violation and entry limit. In the new version, if it's a daily violation, that takes precedent. It'll be light red if it's a violation. And then again, if it's just an entry limit violation, it's showed with a light yellow background. And then obviously if it has neither of those, it's just a white background, or however you set it up in custom. So in custom data entry, very similar to monthly, we've added the data additional info, and LabCal data can now be set up when you locate data, like you go to locate daily variable when you're designing a custom data entry form, it'll say what data additional info fields and LabCal data in fields do you want to put right next to this data. So you can say I can enter my result here, and just like I was talking about in monthly, you can enter in your MDL or your analysis or sample date time right there on the same thing as your custom data entry form. The quick trend graph, again, similar to monthly data entry, is now a floating window. So as I click around on the form, it will show me the quick trend graph for whatever current variable I've selected. We've also added a thing called form data type. What this does is gives you better control of the date loaded. So let's say I have a form where I want to pull it up. It's a weekly form, and I want to pull it up always with the Monday as the first day. And what I'm going to do is I can enter data Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but what I want to do is I want to still show Tuesday and Thursday in case somebody takes a sample, but I'm going to gray those lines out. They could still click on it and enter the data. This allows me to set the form up where if the user pulls up Wednesday, it will load Monday anyway. You could do this previously with a button, but what's nice about this new way is if they get to it from a menu, it will still apply this Monday rule. And also if they go and say, well, I want to go look at data a month ago, they click on the calendar, and again, let's say they pick Thursday of a month ago, it's going to show the Monday before that Thursday that they picked. It'll start always on Monday. So this allows you to set a certain weekday that this form will always be opened on, or the first of the month, or the last day of the month. So it gives you greater control. Again, this is an option if you don't use it. WIMS works like it always has in the past. The day you pull up is the day the user selects is the day that's pulled up. LabCal. We've added a couple of new fields. Received in lab by, so that would be the person that received it in the lab, and the date time of when it was received in the lab has been added in. So that will be on the, well, you could add it into a monthly data entry form and a custom, and it's also been added to that edit or close sample form. The order of the tests and samples can now be set. So if you go to sample setup, and you need to add a new test into a sample, it always added it at the bottom of the list. Now you'll have some up and down arrow keys so you can arrange your tests. Like, let's say you want to put ammonia and nitrite and nitrate together, and then the TSS and the BOD, let's say below that, you can order those tests. You don't have to apply them, or you don't have to create them in the order that you want them in. This makes it a lot easier to maintain if you're trying to organize that list. Also, the order of the samples as they're generated on the calendar can now be set. So let's say you want to do, in your water plant, you want to have your raw water sample listed at the top, and then your combined filter effluent sample listed second. There's an order button that allows you to set the order of those samples as they'll be generated on the calendar. Samples that are ready to be closed, so they're fully analyzed, all results have been entered, it's the sample date time has been set, so they're ready to be closed, are now listed in a window in the lower right corner of LabCal. And what's nice about this is there's a button that just says close all these selected samples. So this can make it a lot easier to close a bunch of samples if you're having difficulty keeping up with that. You can hide this window off the utilities menu, and what it will is, so if you want to still apply the rule that users have to bring up each sample and close it out, you can still do that. But this makes it a lot easier if you need to do batch closing. It also shows you those samples that are like very, very old that maybe you didn't close, that have slipped through the cracks. And that actually can slow down LabCal because it's going to analyze those samples every time to figure out where they go on the calendar and what to do with them. Once they're closed, we do very little with them. So this can help speed up this loading of your LabCal calendar. We've also added something to utilities on the LabCal menu called Send Route to the PPA. So the Hawk SL1000 device that people can use in a distribution system to collect data, what you can do now is you can select the samples off your calendar and send those to the PPA along with the list of operators. So it will create a file, a zip file, that the PPA device uses. So you can set that up, have the operator or the data collector go out and get the data with the PPA, and when they come back, they'll obviously when they go out, they'll have their route, all their samples on there. They can go ahead and collect that data. When they get back, we do have a free interface that will allow you to take data off the PPA device and import those results into WIMS so the results don't have to be rekeyed in. You can get that interface off of our knowledge base, and again, it's a free interface. So miscellaneous, just a couple other things you may be interested in. The units field has been increased to 20 characters. It used to be 10. Logbook entries, like so your daily comments or any logbooks that you've set up, you can now enter up to 4,000 characters per entry. It used to be 2,000. This is only in the Microsoft SQL version. Oracle users, it is still limited to 2,000 characters. So we've added a thing that we call color setup that allows us to define custom colors for spread reports and custom data entry. So when you get into spread report design, there's a color picker that allows you to choose, I want to do a red background or whatever. And what we've had is several users had some custom colors that they wanted to use over and over again, like a lighter shade of red, let's say. And the thing was, you could do that in WIMS and spread design, but you had to know the RGB value. And each session, each time you ran WIMS, you had to go re-enter in those RGB value to get that color to get set up. And now what you can do is go to color setup set it up once, and that will add that color to the pull down list that you can use to choose colors. So if you have some specific colors you need to use, you can add them into the color setup, and then they're forever there for all users to use. Also added a Math Toolbox function called LSD. This is the standard deviation of the last n values. This can be used to calculate MDLs in the lab, or for whatever reason you may need standard deviation. Also, the user type user can now edit and schedule tasks if allowed. So there's a new setting in either the user profile or user setup that allows you to check off that this user is allowed to edit and schedule tasks. So that's it for 766. I know that was kind of a lot of reading, but I hope that's a good introduction for what's new in 766. And again, there's going to be subsequent videos that will take you through the specifics of each one of these sections and kind of show these features in detail, more like a training video.